Hi, everybody. This is Misty with Pixel Financial, and I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I have a visual presentation for you because today is Math Day. Today is the day I teach you how to calculate your full-time equivalent ratio. We're going to call them FTEs. And if you remember from my last video, they are going to approach this one of two ways. Way number one is for seasonal employers, and way number two is for non-seasonal employers. If you are a seasonal employer, the only time period you are going to be able to look at to calculate your FTE is February 15th of 2019 through June 30th of 2019. If you are a non-seasonal employer, you get to choose between that period or January 1st of 2020 through February 29th of 2020, which is great for non-seasonal employers because you'll be able to choose the time period that has the least amount of discrepancy, because the more of a discrepancy you have in your FTE in terms of not having it high enough is going to affect the forgivability of the PPP loan. So if you'll just give me a second here, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see what's going on here. Okay, there we go. So calculating your full-time equivalent ratio, all right? It's actually a fairly simple calculation, but there can be just a lot of steps to it. So I've tried to break this down as much as possible. I could probably have broken it down even further, and I did take some shortcuts, but hopefully you'll be able to follow me. And always feel free to reach out to me and ask a question, or definitely contact your CPAs or managerial accountants. They'll help you. They should help you calculate this as well. So a full-time equivalent employee is essentially your average number of employees over any given period of time. And the way that it is calculated is you take that period of time. For example, you take January 1st of 2020 through February 29th of 2020, and you calculate the total number of operating hours. And then you divide that into the total number of hours worked by your employees, whether they're full-time or part-time employees. Total hours worked by everybody. Now I'm going to give you an example employer so that we can run the calculation. So we've got the example employer is open 5 days a week at 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday, no weekends. It has 3 full-time employees, full-time equaling 40 hours, and has 1 part-time employee. This equates to 120 full-time hours worked and 20 part-time hours per week, for the most part, for a total of 140 hours worked during the week. Now, if we're looking at the February 15th, June 30th time frame, this is 19 weeks and 1 day of operations. Now, that's important because that 1 day, we're going to have to add that into that calculation. So we have 50 hours a week times 19 weeks plus the additional 10 hours, because remember we had 19 weeks and 1 day, equals 960 hours of operations for this time period. Now, the full-time employees worked 40 hours per week, so total full-time hours equals 40 hours times 3, because we have 3 employees, times 19 weeks plus 8 hours times 3, because again of that 1 day. So that's 120 full-time hours times 19 weeks plus 24 hours. So now we have 2,280 hours plus 24 hours equals 2,304 full-time hours worked. Now with part-time employees, they worked 20 hours per week, but we've also got the 1 day. So we're going to average those hours over 1 day. So we've got 20 hours times 1 part-time employee times 19 weeks plus 4 hours times 1, because only 1 part-time employee, and 4 hours because 20 divided by 5 is 4 hours. We're assuming that they are averaging that time. That is 380 hours plus 4, so we have 384 hours of part-time hours worked. So total hours during that period is 2,304 full-time hours plus the 384 part-time hours equals a grand total of 2,688 total hours for that period of time. So to get the FTE, it's simple math. We've got 2,688 hours of worked time divided by the total number of operating hours, which was 960. And that gives us 2.8 full-time equivalent employees. So clearly not full-time, but 2.8 full-time employees. So not quite 3, which makes sense because you've got the 3 full-time employees plus the 1 part-time employee. So that's what that calculation would look like for the February 15th through June 30th of 2019. Now for February 1st through February 29th of 2020, the math is a little bit different. So that is an 8-week and 3-day period of time in terms of operations for this example company. So what we have is 430 hours of operations for this time period. So full-time employees, they work 40 hours per week. So total, they work 1,032 full-time hours during that period of time. Then we have part-time employees, and I went ahead and upped the numbers because sometimes when you're doing really well, which a lot of companies have been lately, your full-time employees work a few more hours. So now they're working 30 hours per week. So that equates to 264 part-time hours worked during that period of time, with a total of 1,296 total hours, full-time and part-time, for the period that was worked. So 1,296 divided by the 430 operating hours equals 3.01 FTEs. So you can see that we're just a little over 3 full-time employees now, with the part-time employee having increased their hour load, their workload a little bit. Now, you're going to want to compare this to something. So my recommendation is to compare it to the last 8 weeks. As we all know, it's been a pretty wild ride. So again, a lot of the numbers are the same. If you're looking at 8 weeks for this example company, you're looking at about 400 hours of operation during this time period. Full-time employees worked a little less. So full-time employees started, instead of working 40 hours a week, are only working 30 hours a week. And let's face it, for a lot of companies, this is actually not even realistic. They're working even fewer hours than that. So we have a total of 420 full-time hours worked. And then with part-time employees, a lot of them are barely working any hours per week, if any at all. So I knocked it down to 10 hours per week because of the COVID crisis. So that is a total of 80 part-time hours worked during this period of time, for a grand total of 800 total hours. And what that gives us, when you divide 800 by the 400 operating hours available, is 2 full-time equivalent ratio, 2.0. So that is a significant difference, and this is what we don't want to see for the PPP loans. They want you to be able to have the same ratio from one period to the next. So here we go. We're comparing it. We've got 2.8 between February 15th and June 30th of 2019. Then we have 3.01 FTEs January 1st through February 29th of 2020. And then the last 8 weeks, it's 2.0. Now, if you are a seasonal employer, you're stopping right here at the 2.8 FTEs. However, if you're a non-seasonal employer, you get to choose the one with the least amount of discrepancy. So in this case, you've got 3.01 for the February 2020, and then for 2019, you have 2.8. So as a non-seasonal employer, you're going to want to use the time period of February 15th, 2019 through June 30th of 2019, because there's less there that you have to fix. The discrepancy is not as big. So, but the good news is it can be fixed, provided that it is fixed by June 30th of 2020. And there are 2 ways to do this. You can hire employees. Now, I know some employees have quit, or you've laid them off temporarily, or you furloughed them, but that doesn't mean that they can't come back to work. However, they may choose not to, and you can hire different people for those positions in order to fill that void. The other option is to increase hours, obviously. In this case, we didn't lay anybody off or furlough anybody, but we certainly did reduce the work hour load significantly. So again, those 2 options, hire or increase hours, are your ways of being able to fix this. So now we're able to develop a new plan. And It's not always going to be perfect, and you're going to be able to get as close as you can, but we want to try to maximize the forgivability of the PPP as much as possible. So here's an idea of a new plan. This is 8 weeks at 50 hours a week. So we're using the same kind of criteria because the PPP loan needs to be used within 8 weeks of receiving it. You have 2 full-time employees who worked 40 hours a week, and you have 1 who works 35 hours per week. So the total number of full-time hours worked is 920 full-time hours. With part-time, you go ahead and you bumped that employee back up to 20 hours per week. So now we're up to 160 part-time hours worked for a grand total of 1,080 hours worked during the 8-week period. So when you divide the 1,080 by the 400 operating hours available, you get 2.7 FTEs. Now, that's not up to 2.8, so it's something that you're going to have to play with. It's not going to come out perfect every time, but it's why you need to be working on this right now to make sure that you get as close as you can. Now, my suspicion is that no matter what we do, there's going to be a portion of these PPP loans for almost everyone that is not going to be forgivable. Thankfully, though, we can do everything we can to maximize this, and then whatever's not forgivable will be paid off in 2 years at 1% interest. So it's not too terribly bad. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to end that slideshow, and that pretty much covers it. Now, the other thing you have to be really careful about is that you don't want your salary or wage levels to decrease significantly from the previous period. You want to make sure that it doesn't decrease any more than 25%. And again, the way you avoid that is increasing hours, paid leave, and hiring more people. So hopefully this explains the full-time equivalent to you a little bit better. I highly, highly recommend that if it's just overwhelming to you, that you contact your consultants, your CPAs, your managerial accountants. I know our firm has reached out to all of our clients and let them know that if they are using or attempting to get the PPP loan, to certainly contact us as soon as possible so that we can start working these numbers for them. So again, let me know if you have any questions. I'm interested to see how it's working out for all of you, and I really appreciate the fact that you're tuning in. Feel free to share the video. This is super important, and if there's anything that can make this a little easier for you, please let me know, and I will certainly try to work that out. Thanks so much, you guys. We'll talk to you next time.